I'm going to start off with what General Mattis said and kind of reemphasize and elaborate on what he means by, veterans aren't necessarily, they're not damaged goods and we're not victims. So on that piece, just know that since around 2001, 2002, we've been an all-volunteer military force. Nobody was forced to join, nobody was told, nobody was drafted. It's been an all-volunteer force. They chose to serve their country in whatever capacity they felt the call of duty was for them. Guys just come back different. Every person, whatever occupation they are in the military, they come back to the States, and whether they're transitioning out or they stay active duty, they take it in different ways. And I want to emphasize that the guys that come through our program, guys and gals that come through our program, are not victims. They're absolutely not victims. But what we can assume is that they carry something with them every single day, or lots of somethings. So when they come through the program, treat them like they're normal people. Know that these guys are warfighters. They're not toddlers, getting ready to go on a big slide for the first time, or whatever the case is. They have been to war. They are knuckle-dragging, hard-nosed guys. And I think they should be treated as such, but as normal people, if that makes any sense. That is, like I said, these guys are warfighters. They don't need you to help them put a Band-Aid on their finger. They don't need you to kind of scoot them along on their first day of preschool. They're men. They're men and women. No politics when interacting with warriors. No politics ever. Even if the warrior or another volunteer or whoever, even if they share the same perspective as you, it doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't lead anywhere positive. You don't know who's listening. You don't know where the conversation or the dialogue is going to go. So it's just safer to stay out of politics. And if a warrior happens to bring up politics, do your best to kind of redirect the conversation. And what I mean by that is not change change the subject right away, but just kind of guide the conversation if you can away from politics. Because whatever, just no politics, okay? Everybody agree? Awesome. You're gonna have to sign something for that.
They already did.
Nice. Next thing is this one has a little bit of a buffer on each side, is religion. A lot of us in this room are spiritual and involved in the church of some kind or in religion, but it's typically best to steer away from religion as well, because same guidelines as politics. You don't know where that conversation is going to lead, whose beliefs are different, whose beliefs are in line. It's just safer not to go there. But what I mean by a little bit of buffer there is if just throw out kind of a little scenario. If you find yourself alone with a warrior and there's literally nobody else around or within hearing or within audible range, I mean, sure. I mean, if you guys are both Catholic or if you guys are both whatever, and you're having a meaningful conversation, I can't really tell you not to have that meaningful conversation, but try your best to redirect that conversation if it's starting to go not the way you intended. In the past, we asked that no promises are made, and there's lots of areas of promises, whether it's you're inviting them back to stay at your house, whether you're saying, literally come back anytime you want, anytime, because guys will take you up on that. And if you're not prepared to actually follow through on that promise, I mean, those effects on that individual could be potentially detrimental, because they're probably looking forward to it. Maybe they needed to come to Montana, and if you're not available and you're not keeping your promise, you don't know the effects that could have on that guy or gal. And another aspect of promises is we have our couples and alumni programs. but I need you all to know that not everybody is invited back for alumni or couples. So and the reason why I say this is because in the past years since I've taken this job, there have been many instances where either a guy was here that probably shouldn't have been here, or somebody somewhere on an FX told that person, oh yeah, you know, we have couples and alumni, yeah, you can definitely come back for those, when it's not really the place to invite them back. Because like I said, not everybody gets invited back until we get to observe them for the week and see if they're a good fit for our program. And so back to related to my job. Guys will inquire with me and say, oh, so what are the dates for the alumni FX? Or what are the dates for the couples FXs this year? Already assuming that they can come. And it's my job to tell them, well, unfortunately you weren't, you weren't among those selected to return. And then it goes back and forth, but it goes back and forth, back and forth. Well, so-and-so said I could come. Well, so-and-so said, promised me. Well, so-and-so promised me that I could come 2 times next year. So-and-so, whatever the case is, it happens, and I like to avoid that frustration. Not frustration on my end. It's more time on my end, but frustration on the participants. I don't want them to have high hopes of returning, and then boom, they don't get invited back. Again, we go back to the effects that could have on that individual. So I kindly ask that just no promises are made. And if couples or alumni FXs are mentioned or brought up, because they're on our website, they know they exist. If they are brought up, a good response would just be, oh, well, you know what? Saul's a good person to talk to about that. I think everybody here knows what it feels like when you're promised something and it's not followed through on, right? I think everybody's experienced that at least once. It doesn't feel good. So I'd like to avoid that for our participants. There's going to be guys and gals coming through that have visible wounds. There's a lot that have invisible wounds. There's some that look perfectly capable. A good example of that is we've got a few Navy SEALs coming through. I mean, you're talking about a sexy individual, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with this guy. He's a Navy SEAL. Again, it goes back to we don't know what that guy carries with him on a daily basis. Everybody that's here needs to be here. So just be aware of that not everybody's going to have, they're not going to be, if they're not missing legs, if they don't have burns, if they don't have something visible, just know that they're here for a reason. And on those wounds and whatever they carry with them, just no poking or prodding. If they open up and want to discuss or talk about with you, like if you're a companion or a driver, and they want to open up with you and say, oh, actually, you know what, man, I got blown up by an IED in 2007 and it's been hell, since. That goes back to the empathy video. Be ready to listen. But if they don't mention it, like if a guy, like the guy in the first slide, Patrick Myers, obviously he's wheelchair bound, he's missing both his legs, both the knee. I mean, you could kind of make your own assumptions about what happened, but in that case, please try not to be like, oh, well, how'd that happen? It's just, in the wounded community, it's kind of a rude question. When people will just come up, I mean, I've been at a urinal before, wearing shorts, and guys will come up to me, how'd that happen? Like, what? Drink a lot of water. What do you expect? Like, this is not the right time to be asking me that. So obviously not that severe of a case, and that's happened to me. I can't even count how many times that's happened. But try not to be so direct. Try not to be so direct about what's going on with them, especially if they don't have anything visible, because those guys, you have no idea what they've been through. I have no idea what they've been through. And if you start inquiring and trying to prod, like, what's actually wrong with you, which has happened in the past, in the years of quiet waters. And that's why we've worked so hard to kind of develop this practice of, respect and empathy versus, well, shoot, man, you're a Navy SEAL, what's wrong with you? I mean, just don't make that assumption. And plus, don't pick a fight with a Navy SEAL. It's just not good practice. I wouldn't, no way. So that's that. Anybody have any questions or concerns about anything I've covered so far? Yes, no?
I know that in the past we've had a lot of people try to be too helpful.
Yes.
Could you go over that, please?
Yes, absolutely, thank you. If you got a guy like Patrick Myers, for example, your first instinct is just to be like, please let me just help you in any way I can. Just let me, I don't care what it is, just let me help you. That's great. That just shows that you're a very caring person. But a good approach in a general sense is if you ask them for if they need help once and they say, no, I'm good, leave it. No, just once is enough, because like I said, these guys are grown adults, and if they need help, I guarantee you they will ask for it. There's times when I need help. I ask Sarah for help all the time. That's why she's so stressed out all the time, because she has to help me every day.
I usually say no. So.
Exactly. She leaves me to do everything on my own, which is helpful. And that's a good segue into my next point. It's actually good for them to figure stuff out on their own. A lot of these guys with visible and invisible wounds, it's good for them to figure stuff out on their own while they're here and in such a safe environment that it's good to practice that. So, what happened?
So, I'm Saul Martinez, and these two ladies are on my team for moms. And last year on our FX, we had 2 participants that are missing an arm, or hand, actually. One's missing a hand, one's missing an arm. And for me, being married to an amputee, and actually knew these 2 guys from before, many years ago, I know my instinct is to say, let me serve your food for you. Especially salad, the tongs, you know, let me just do it, it's just easier for me. And then I thought, no, they do this at home all the time. I'm not their mother. I mean, I don't even do it for my own kids. But just control how they, I guess what we can control is how, like the things we offer to them. So we made sure the tongs were the one-handed tongs. So with their good hand, they can put their plate down and they can serve themselves. That kind of thing, instead of offering to help. Because if they need help, they'll ask or they'll figure it out themselves.
Just like with Patrick, I told him, when I picked him up at the airport, all I knew was he was a big guy in a wheelchair. That's what I was told before we showed up. So I show up and, you know, we got out to the car and I didn't know how he could get in a car or anything. And I just told him, I said, look, Patrick, I said, I have no idea what you need. I said, but you tell me what you need and I'll make it happen. And he goes, I don't need anything. He goes, just pull the truck up here. And he opened the door, he scooted his chair in. Before I could get it from the driver's seat around to the other side, he was already in the truck, strapped in, and he said, hey, just hold up my chair and throw it in the back.
Perfect. That's a perfect way to be. Whatever, that's a great approach, David. Whatever you need, I'm here. Like plain and simple.
I have one little story. We were there at the airport to pick up a group of 6 coming in, and the one individual that I walked up to was the only one in a wheelchair, and he was Filipino. And I walked up, introduced myself, called him by name, and he goes, oh, you just recognize me because you're in a wheelchair? And I said, no, you're the only Filipino here. And his demeanor from, I'll call it a passive aggressive a little bit, went completely other direction immediately, just like that. And it was clear setting the rest of it.
It's amazing what your interaction, the effects it could have on a person, especially on the first case. Yes, Marianne.
I just want to say too that I think for me personally, and I think it's going to be common for a lot of people for their first time, that it is really hard to not want to help them. I mean, it's really hard for me. I always want time like Sarah, where I'm just like, oh, I just want to repay them. I mean, like to me, it's like this is the least I could do is get your plate and take it to the table. But they're serious. They don't like it. I mean, so like if he's serious, like I think that's really important to say. Like if you say, "Can I help you?" and they say no, they mean no. and they don't want to talk about it again, and they will come to you and say, hey, I do need this, can you help me with this or something? But I think that's a hard one for civilians to get, because you can't imagine why they wouldn't want, like here they are, just like on vacation. In my mind, I'm like, God, I would do everything here for you, but that's not really what they want.
Exactly. Yes, Mike.
So this is sort of related. Everybody knows that the volunteers get probably as much as the warriors out of the program, but could you speak to the dangers of making it about yourself rather than the warrior? It's an easy thing for any of us to do.
Absolutely.
Because life has its ups and downs.
Yes, absolutely. So while the warriors are here, it's not about you. Another person, but just try to remember it's not about you. It's about them. This whole program revolves around our warriors and revolves around our participants. And if you try to, that's why that video is so great, the one on empathy, is because it just tells you how to be a good listener, in a very simple way. Be a good listener, because if you start talking about yourself and you try to connect with, like, oh, one time I went to Florida, and whatever the dialogue is, I mean, that can cause a disconnection between you and the warrior, almost immediately. I don't know about you, but I don't really like people to talk about themselves. So, yeah, that could be the effect. Is it could cause that disconnect, and then whether it happens on the first day or the third day, once that disconnect happens, there's no going back. There's no fixing that, because they can get a good beat. They're very intuitive. Guys are very intuitive, like most people are, but for some reason, warriors, they've been around so many different types of people that they can get a good beat on you right away. So just keep that in the back of your head when you're interacting with them. But main story about this, I don't want you guys to feel like you're walking around on eggshells around these guys. Just be yourself. You guys are all here for a reason. Emily's working so hard to select volunteers for a reason, and you are here for that because of that long process. And so just be yourself. I mean, I love when people are themselves around me, and I know you guys all are too. I mean, when I'm around support guys, like the first time I was ever around the support guys, I won't say the language that we spoke,
No.
the type of language that we spoke, but just know that just by them being themselves made me immediately comfortable. Just immediately comfortable. So just try to remember that. And then also, one last thing on the asking for help thing. The only time in my eyes to intervene without them asking for help is if they're about to cause harm to themselves or somebody else. Okay, so like if, that's a good example. So if a guy is about to transfer into a boat and you see like there's not enough space for him to transfer and he's probably about to fall because the boat's not going to be stable and it's going to slip off or whatever, then get in there, get close, just in case. Okay, but I mean there's a lot of different scenarios that can apply to, but if they're going to cause themselves or others harm, that's the only time it's okay, in my eyes, to intervene without their permission. So service animals. I've made it a point. There was a lot of times, unfortunately, where guys brought their pets and called them service dogs. And you can tell a service dog, if you've ever been around Nebula, minus when she's cruising the kitchen for scraps, she still won't take anything off the counter. But if you've ever been around, like my dog Nebula, while we're working or while she's working, if the dog is not behaving as such, 99% chance they're not actually a service dog. So over the past year, it started at last year, was now we have a service dog agreement that only legitimately trained and recognized service dogs are allowed. And then there's also an agreement and an acknowledgement that waste handling is their responsibility as well as the dog's behavior. So I did it to semi-scare the guys off that don't have real service dogs, but I also did it to give the guys who have legitimate service dogs that reassurance that we take that into that we take that seriously. Like if you want to bring your legitimately trained service dog, you are more than welcome to do so. And by law, we're actually not allowed to deny people who bring service animals, whether they are legitimately trained or not, but it's kind of a good filter. And, but yeah, when they bring, so on the interaction with service dogs, sorry, the best approach is like with any other dog. I mean, this is the type of things I tell my kids, do you ever pet a dog that you don't know without permission? Probably not, right? Because then that dog will freaking bite your hand off. You don't know that. So safest approach is leave the dog be, especially if they're vested and have a uniform on. Over time, it might be okay when you can ask the service member, hey, is it okay if I pet your dog? But if they say no, you need to respect that.
You can ask them if they're working too.
Exactly. So, and a dog can be working with a vest and without a vest. So if the dog is engaged in their job, it's, I won't go into the whole span of details about why we don't touch service dogs without permission. But if, it's the best bet is just ask. If you really can't contain yourself, like you really got to pet that dog, yes, ask. But if they say no, please respect that. So safest bet is ignore the dog. If worst comes to worst, especially when they're coming off the plane, if you're at the airport or even at the ranch, just ignore the dog for a while until they get settled. Okay? And if anybody ever has any questions or wants more info on that, I'm more than happy. You guys email me, call me at the office, anything. So I want to cover really, really quick, hopefully really quick, about who gets selected for our program and how. So as best as I can put it in the Cliff Notes, the guys and gals who are here need to be here, A, and B, they have reached out to us and they've shown interest in benefiting from our program in some way, shape, or form. So that's the base of it. And the process they all go through, we have an online application, we have, we get referrals from past participants and other sources. I meet guys when I do my outreach trips, so there's a few different ways they come in, but every one of them is required to submit their DD-214. For those of you that don't know what a DD-214 is, it's essentially one, sometimes two pieces of paper that lists their entire service record, from the day they entered the military to the day they exited, and it covers awards, badges, schools, education, their time, and especially their time deployed in an active combat theater. And these are all things that I look for, whether it's in their award section, in badges, I could talk for hours about all the factors that I take into consideration when selecting these guys. And another aspect of that, and so they have to go through, I kind of wanted to show you guys the flow chart, but I opted out of it because it's pretty intense. It's like, I don't even remember, it's like 27 different bubbles of the flow chart of the process each guy goes through. So just know that and I probably dedicate a good 3 or 4 hours on each application and each DD-214 to ensure that we're getting the guys who A, need to be here, and B, the guys who want to be here. So there's that. If you have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer questions too later. Okay. Well, thank you guys for your time, and most importantly, thank you for taking the time to volunteer for Warriors of Quiet Waters. You guys are gonna have a good time and a beneficial experience on your end and the participants' end.